speaker who's hugely popular on YouTube. His videos have generated, I think, over 500,000 views, if not more. He's got some great content out there. Borys Pikalov is the co-founder at Stobox. Stobox also has carved a very good name in the asset tokenization space. I did a fireside chat with him a few weeks ago and actually loved that conversation. I said, I got to bring Borys back. He's got a great topic to solving the liquidity puzzle for tokenized real estate, and he's joining us all the way from Poland. A quick note on Stobox: they are an award-winning tokenization company that provides technology and consulting to help their clients leverage digital assets and tokenized securities. So very qualified to speak on this topic. You have 15 minutes, Borys. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for the kind words. And thank you everybody who decided to join and spend your time educating and learning about innovations and the cool stuff that you can do. Let me check if I can share my screen.
Yes.
I guess you can see it now.
Yes.
Super. Okay, so I'm here to continue the topic that has been raised by the previous speakers about liquidity as being the primary benefit of tokenizing property or just almost any other kind of asset. And for those who don't know, liquidity is just how easy it is to trade the asset, to buy and sell it, how fast you can find a buyer, and how much effort do you need to put into selling it at the right price. Apologies for the background noise. And liquidity is, to me, is one of the key determinants that distinguishes tokenization from other kinds of fundraising, because you can get fractional ownership with crowdfunding, for example, if you go for equity crowdfunding, but if you can get it with rates, for example, but there are very few other options that allow you to get liquidity, especially for single assets. But the problems I have very commonly observed is that issuers believe that merely issuing the token is enough to create liquidity to get the token traded. And this unfortunately can be further from truth. And this really harms the industry. This harms the potential that we can reach, and it harms the success of many projects that we are seeing. And this is why I'm having this conversation. My goal is twofold. One, to expand your perspective on what is required to actually realize liquidity and get the return on investment on your tokenization efforts. But secondly, also to connect it to big ideas about what transformation in general is happening thanks to blockchain, and probably also to inspire you a bit to pursue tokenization and liquidity and get onto this ship of this great transformation. So, but before I proceed to discussing how to create liquidity, let's spend a few minutes discussing why do we want to create liquidity. And the reason why liquidity matters is because markets matter. And in order to understand why do we want liquidity, we need to ask, what is the benefit of having efficient liquid markets? And for this, we can ask a granddaddy of economics, Adam Smith, who taught us that when you have a good developed market, you get the invisible hand effectively allocating goods and services and assigning price to them. What it means in the context of capital markets is that liquid markets create efficient allocation of capital and efficient pricing of assets. Now, think about this for a second. Only less than 1% of companies in the world are publicly traded and therefore have sufficient access to capital and adequate pricing. For the biggest part of the economy, their access to capital is constricted, and we don't have the market actively deciding which of these companies are more and efficient. So I actually tend to believe that illiquidity of private markets is the biggest inefficiency that exists out there. And by unlocking this liquidity and creating efficient markets for assets like real estate, like private equity, we can significantly increase the economic growth. And our economy can be, instead of being like 2 times bigger in 20 years, it can be 2.5 times bigger. So this is about prosperity for all of us. Moreover, increased access to capital for small and medium enterprises is also about equality. because entrepreneurship is one of the main social ladders, because small businesses and startups are the main creators of new jobs in the economy, and the decline of entrepreneurship is one of the reasons why there is a decline in employment and new high quality jobs being created. So this isn't only about pragmatic benefit of you being attractive for more investors. Some investors who don't invest in illiquid assets at all, including many retail investors, including also institutional investors like mutual funds who are legally prohibited from investing in illiquid assets. This is also creating a more equal and more prosperous world. Now when we understand why do we want liquidity, let's discuss what is necessary in order to create it. And here we have three key requirements that need to be done. We need an infrastructure for trading, we need education of investors, and we need to give investors the why, the reason why they would like to stick with you and to distinguish you from other companies and go for trading. So let's discuss each of these one by one, starting from the topic of infrastructure. And this one is more complex than most people realize, because what you typically believe that all you need to do is just issue a token and then get this token listed on exchanges and you're golden. Now you have a market and liquidity and trading. In practice, unfortunately, it isn't that easy. Why? Because your asset and your market cap is anyway smaller than the market cap of typical publicly traded companies. So there are just at all times less people holding your tokens, and therefore less people who want to buy and sell it at all times. So it's not enough to just have a place where people can trade, because very often you can have not enough people to conduct this trading. And for this, you need multiple components that would make this trading easier or encourage it. So it is true that one of the basic tools that you need in your toolkit is exchanges, where buyers and sellers would be brought together. But there are a few more aspects that you want to add to it. One is you want to add possibility for peer-to-peer trading. Why does it matter? Because when your asset doesn't have a large market capitalization and your market isn't highly liquid, a big trade can significantly influence the price upwards or downwards. And therefore, and this is the reasons why small cap stocks are highly volatile. And the way in which you reduce this volatility is you keep large trades outside of the main market happening between private participants who can absorb those large transactions. And therefore, you need separate markets for peer-to-peer trades in the form of a bulletin board or a matching service, which would help people who want to make large trades to connect to each other and negotiate and conduct those trades at better terms without disrupting the price and creating volatility, because higher volatility makes investors less confident in your assets and actually decreases trading activity, which further steals liquidity, which further increases the volatility. So you get this downward spiral of increased volatility and decreased liquidity, which you definitely want to avoid. Another aspect of that is market making. I believe for companies with a market cap up to 100 million, market making is thoroughly required. Why is it necessary? Because when you have not that many buyers and sellers, it is entirely possible that I want to sell your tokens today, but someone who would be able to buy them would emerge only, let's say, in 1 week. And I don't want to wait a week in order to get this token. So we need an additional tool that would bridge between these two trades and serve as an intermediary. And this is why market makers would be are so crucial. By facilitating these transactions that are different in time, they can smooth out these fluctuations in demand and supply for your tokens and allow anybody to sell or buy your tokens at any point at a reasonable price. These market makers can be centralized, so it can be an actual broker dealer sitting there and buying and selling tokens, or it can be an automated market maker with a liquidity pool created using a decentralized exchange like Uniswap or like our exchange, Digital Securities Swap, which can facilitate these trades. One of the benefits, by the way, is that in some jurisdictions, listing on centralized exchanges would always require you to register as a public company, while having your tokens bought by a licensed market maker doesn't necessarily create such a condition. So for companies for whom public registration isn't feasible, market making can be one of the best solutions to create sufficient liquidity. Lastly, and this is the least obvious and least discussed aspect, you need a lending infrastructure in order to enable efficient markets. Why? Because of several reasons. One is because sometimes users want to make a leveraged trade, and for leveraged trades they need lending. Also, sometimes instead of selling the assets, people, in order to get cash, people can use this asset as a collateral against a loan. And real estate as a very safe asset is actually quite a good loan collateral. So this allows people to get a cash that is a more liquid asset without actually selling their property and creating a downward pressure. So to use tokenized real estate as collateral is necessary. Also, lending of securities is necessary for short selling. Think about WeWork, for example. The reason why WeWork grew so big and why we wasted billions of dollars in funding on that company is because short sellers were unable to short the company sooner than it started preparing for the IPO. And one of the reasons why it wasn't possible is precisely because there was no possibility to bet against WeWork. And this is why, by allowing to borrow securities and therefore sell them, and so making a short sale, you enable you enable speculators and short sellers to basically police the market and allow for a more efficient price discovery. So this is an infrastructure part. And now let's go to point 2, which is education. And here is the point that I like to make. Many people, we live in an economy which is mostly owned by top 1% or top 10%. And most of the US stocks, about 80%, are held by top 10% of the population. That is, most people don't invest, or they invest in only public companies and don't know how to invest in smaller private companies or real estate. And they have little experience doing due diligence and investing properly in companies that aren't reviewed by competent authorities. And they would most likely be afraid to invest in such companies, and they would be unaware of how to use all this infrastructure mentioned previously. So if you want to help people invest and trade your tokens, you need to show them how. You need to create training materials. You need to explain them how to choose between properties you are suggesting. You need to show them how to assess risks. And this is a big shift that all of us are participating in. What me and you and everybody here, what we are doing is helping people transition from consumer and worker class to an owner class. Because another big point of equality is ownership assets, and by reducing the barrier to the ownership of assets, we make economy more equal. We allow everybody benefit from money printing and economic growth, instead of this benefit only a small subset of rich asset owners. So by helping people by educating people on how to invest well, we don't just help ourselves by getting more trading volume and increasing the price of our assets, we also help them to transition to a new mode of being, which is hopefully better for them financially. And this is another big transformation that all of us are participating in. Now, moving on to my next point, and this is answering the question, why you? Because what is happening now when we are unlocking capital markets for private companies, dozens of thousands of companies are going to flood the market with their assets. And now investors are going to ask, why should we care about you? Why should we invest? Why should we monitor your tokens, monitor your company performance and trade your token instead of a myriad of companies like you? And this is especially challenging for real estate developers and owners, because like many rental properties are the same or are compared only on very pragmatic basis. So you need to really think hard about how do you differentiate yourself and stand out on this crowded market to create the proper liquidity. A trivial answer to this question that is given by many is to merely promise outsized super high returns, like 100% return in 2 years, and attract people like that. But I believe this is to a large extent a lack of imagination and a lack of empathy for why people want to be related to companies. And this limits you in terms of business model that you can choose. So I would highly encourage you to consider alternative reasons how you can engage people in caring about you sufficiently to trust part of their funds into your tokens. And here are a few options to consider. One of them is delight. You want to create delightful experiences because as consumers on a daily basis, we consume dozens of products. So if you want to stand in our minds, you need to create an experience that is delightful, that resonates with us emotionally, and that wants people to not only come back, but to actually become part of what people will more likely believe that your token will rise in value. You created is not just good, not just the high quality, but delightful and goes beyond what is typically expected from a high quality product by consumers. Second point is purpose. Often people invest, especially in smaller companies, not because they believe in a high growth potential, although this is also a factor. Investing in smaller companies and assets, even in real estate, is still riskier than investing in Apple or Google. And one of the reasons why people take this risk is because they emotionally care about the purpose that you bring forth to the world. Why do you exist? Why do people want to support you with their money instead of anybody else? Maybe you offer hospitality for poorer folk, for example. Maybe you want to create better spaces where people can collaborate and align with each other authentically. There are many reasons what you can do which would make people care and want to trade your tokens and keep your tokens in memory instead of anything else. And last factor is community, because the problem with social media in modern world that we're all becoming more and more alienated and lonely, and this is one of the reasons for the epidemic of mental health disorders. And businesses can play in alleviating this by creating communities, by creating people who care about the same activity or the same purpose or the same lifestyle coming together around your business. And when your business becomes this focal point that unites people with different interests, that you're again more likely to be such an inherent part of their lives that not investing in you becomes actually a problem, because when you have such a high stake in their lives, they want to have a stake in you and have a voting power and economic impact on what you do so that they can steer your company in the right direction. So creating a community and being a focal point of it is another great way to stand out and make people care enough so they would want to buy and sell your tokens, and they continuously monitor what's happening. So that's it. And the last point I want to say is that everything I told you can look a bit complex, and it is true. You and I, we are pioneers. We are still only creating the infrastructure and educating people, and this is harder than it is for, let's say, to go a standard fundraising route. But this is also so much more rewarding, not only in terms of getting more capital, getting much better terms, getting supporters, getting selling your assets at higher prices, not only in terms of these pragmatic benefits, but because when we push these boundaries and apply extra effort, we are also making the world a better place. We are promoting higher economic growth. We are creating equality. We are educating people to make better lives for them economically. We are giving people something to care about, to connect to the world. And this is worth a lot. This is probably, I don't know, for me personally, this is why I am in this business, and I probably wouldn't want to work in this if it wasn't for something bigger than merely making money. So in the 21st century, if you want to stand out, if you want to get all the benefits of innovation and technology, you need something more. You need to bring your heart and authenticity into it. And I hope I provided you with a bit of inspiration and guidance for how specifically this can be done. Thank you a lot for your attention. And if you want to contact me, if you want us to support you with your tokenization efforts or just have a fun chat, here is my email. So feel free to reach out, and happy to answer any questions.
Hey, Borys, in interest of time, we may have to skip we are a little bit behind, so we'll have to skip the Q&A, but if you can put your any of your social media handles for people to connect with you, Twitter or something like that, please do that. And can't wait for you to come down to the US, especially Silicon Valley, for an in-person event when we host one in the future.
Okay, I'll put my email is bp@stobox.io. You can go at our website and feel free to reach out. And thank you again for inviting me, Tom.
Really appreciate that. Right, we'll be in touch. Thanks so much, Borys. Very relevant topic.